this video I have made a sped up version of this drawing for YouTube, and I'll explain to you what I did. I worked for my own reference photo, and I had a lot of fun drawing this flower. So I divided this drawing in sections. I started off with the petals, then I moved on to the center part of the flower. I call it the heart. I'm not sure if that is what it's actually called, but I call it the heart. And then I moved on to the stem and the leaves. So yeah, I hope you'll enjoy watching. So as I said, I used polychromos, but I also used one white Caran d'Ache luminance for the blending process. So I start off here with a base layer of light purple pink. The most used colors in the petals are light purple pink, middle purple pink, and then magenta. And I also used a lot of Caput Mortuum violet. That's a very dark and lovely color for shadows. So I started off with light purple pink as a base layer on all the leaves. I already made a difference between the darker areas and the light areas, so I put a little bit more pressure on the darker areas, so you can already see a bit of a variation there. And then after the base layers, I started darkening up the shadows a little bit more. And then, to make sure that the leaves are not completely purple, I did want to put in some color variation. I used some red, so this is a bit of a pinkish red. And I used that on the shadows as well. And then to really darken up the shadows, I used magenta and Caput Mortuum violet. So what I basically do is start off with a really light base layer on the whole area, and then jump right onto the dark shadows. And then after that's done, I can judge the middle values of the drawing better. So light first, then dark, and then the middle tones. And then after all the base layers are done, I take my Caran d'Ache luminance, and with that I blend the colors together. And I do make sure to not put a lot of pressure on the paper yet. I do want to be able to layer more colors on top after blending. So I'm being very careful, so I am able to put on a lot of layers on the paper. So I just keep on layering until I get the right amount of value. So you can see me here working with the Caput Mortuum violet again. I really like this color. It's one of my most used colors. Also in pet portraits, I really like it for shadows, for black fur. So yeah, it's definitely a must-have if you're working with polychromos. And then to put in some structure and some highlights, I used the Jelly Roll pen by Sakura, the white one. With that I can put in some small highlights. And then it was time to move on to the heart of the flower. So it's a very yellow heart. I used a lot of yellows, but also reds and some darker colors, some darker oranges. So this was a really fun part to draw. And also the texture was very fun to draw. I started off with a base layer of very light yellow. And then I used cadmium yellow, so that's a bit of a darker yellow to darken up the edges of the heart. And then I jumped over to burnt ochre, and with that I started putting in the texture in the heart. So for this texture here, I wasn't really copying my reference photo. I was just trying to recreate the structure a little bit and create the intention of all these dots on the heart. I also saw some green on the edges, so I used some green, mostly earth green yellowish. And then to darken up the shadows in the heart a little bit, I used terracotta and burnt sienna, also some walnut brown. And then there were some red spots in the center of the heart, and so I darkened those up with different types of reds. And then at the end some Caput Mortuum violet again to really darken up that area. And after that the heart was done, so I moved on to the stem. So for this stem I started off with a base layer, and for that I used earth green yellowish. So I just put down a very light base layer and then I moved on to adding some shadows. So the petals of the flower are casting a shadows over the stem, but not the whole stem, just the first half. So that part is a bit darker. So to darken that up, I used Nuga, and here I'm using Pine Green. And I'm still using not too much pressure, so I'm really working in light layers, and I save the firmer pressure for the very last layers. And to make sure that the stem wasn't really too bright of a green, I also used Payne's Grey and some cold grays. So to tone down that green a little bit. I don't want it to look fake. So now that the base layers of the shadow part are done, I moved on to the rest of the stem, and for that I mostly used the earth green yellowish. I really like that tone. It's a middle green but not too green. It has some yellow in it, and that's why it's called earth green yellowish. It's a bit of a weird name, but it's a really nice tone of green. Also, I made sure to use sharp points all the way, because I don't want the edges to be smudgy. So yeah, make sure to sharpen your pencil all the time, and that makes it so much easier to get realistic results. And for the highlights, you could see me doing using my Tombow Mono Zero eraser, and what I do with that is I cut off the edge in a diagonal way, so it has a very sharp point, and then I can pull out some highlights with the eraser. And then for that little knob there, that was a little darker, so I used cold grays, but darker grays, so cold gray 5, cold gray 4, and also Payne's Grey, and some black even. And then when the whole stem was done, I moved on to the leaves. There were some leaves sticking out, so I decided to add those. And for those I mostly used Pine Green and Payne's Grey. And then finally there was a leaf that was a bit blurry because it was in the background, so I tried to recreate that by creating a very blurry, undetailed leaf. I hope I succeeded. I'm not sure if I should have left it out or not, but let me know what you think. After this, the drawing was done. It took about 5 hours. I reduced the tutorial on Patreon to 4.5 hours, but it's totally real time. So if you're interested in following that tutorial, feel free to have a look on my Patreon. And then yeah, thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you think of it. If you have any questions for me about this drawing, and I'll see you in the next video.